Hello students, welcome to Global Online. And as you all know that we have started preparing for on the daily basis, we are preparing on latest topics, whether in the form of MCQs or whether in the form of concepts. So today for this session, that is for NTA UGC NET JRF 2023, for paper 1, I have brought the topics as per the latest analysis of the cycle based on research aptitude. So whatever examinations have happened, that is from 13 onwards, these topics are very common, especially the topics of sources, variables, sampling. And this I have also added hypothesis and the scales of measurement. So in one session, it will be all revision for you. And these topics are coming very frequently, so it will be easier for you to go through this topic. Before we go ahead, let me tell you, for your quick revision, Global Online has also brought a quick revision PDF for you all, which will be consisting of 2000 MCQs, updated MCQs, current affairs, short notes, also your previous year question papers and most repeated question. And this all is available at a package of 699. You can get in touch with us on the WhatsApp number in order to get a copy for your paper 1 PDF, that is your paper 1 PDF. At the same time, you can download our Global Online app with the help of Google Play Store. On this app, you can see all the courses. This is how the interface look. It consists of live lectures, recorded classes, mock test, your syllabus notes, 2000 plus MCQ in the form of question bank. All this is available in a very systematic and organized way as per the units given in the syllabus, and within the units you have all the study material. So let's start the session for the day, everyone. Agenda for today's lecture. Today, as I said, we'll be focusing on sources, then we'll be understanding the types of variables, then we will be going ahead with the sampling techniques, and then we'll be discussing the various scales. So let's start with the first topic, that is sources. So as you are aware that sources are divided into basically two parts, that is your primary source, first one, and then coming to your secondary sources. But we have something called as tertiary sources also. There was one particular question on this particular topic in last year itself. So you have to be very clear what do you mean by this tertiary sources also. So let's first understand what are primary sources. Primary sources are those sources in research which are called as first-hand sources. Like for example, research-based journals, articles, thesis, dissertation, symposia, proceedings, original art, government reports, which are, authenticated, photographs, speeches, diaries, personal narratives, correspondence, interviews, and biographies. These are the many examples which are a part of primary sources. Now, the reason to tell you this examples was, you will be getting any examples and where you have to find out odd man out. Okay, so these are the simple things but can have a really important value for your net examination. Many a times we tend to forget the simple things and our focus is more on complex things, but unless and until you do not go from your important magazine of teaching, that is simple to complex, it will be difficult for you to score marks for such type of questions. So primary sources, basically what you mean by primary sources is that the sources which are first hand, which you do it originally, which you acquired it originally, and these are the examples. If I go to secondary sources talks about the sources which are already available and it has been done by someone. You take that sources as a reference, like for example, books, journals, review, research work. So these count as what? These count as the secondary sources. But then there is something called as tertiary sources. Normally, when we talk about tertiary sources, these sources do not have, they are not authored by anyone. I mean to say they are the textbooks, they are the reference material, dictionaries, Wikipedia, directories, guidebooks, or handbooks, and they are available for, for your further references and research. So these are the types of sources, and any one question will be expected from this particular topic. Okay, then we have the next topic is variables. Now we are aware that you have variables called as independent and dependent variable. Okay, so first of all, what exactly these variables are, let's understand. Okay, so whenever you come up with a research proposal, whenever you come up with your research problem, you first try to find out which are the variables out of which is your independent variable, which is your dependent variable, which is abbreviated as IV, independent variable, which influence dependent variable, which is abbreviated as DV. So independent variables are those what you can decide to change in an experiment. It means you can control them, you can manipulate them, you can they are the cause and they are the influencers. And what they do, the manipulation brings changes, causes brings results, and influences can bring the effect. Like for example, if I take an example of effect of light, okay, on the plant growth, effect of light on the plant growth. So if I'm talking about light, okay, so just put a question to yourself, that if a plant grows, okay, maybe the plant gets sufficient amount of light, it grows very well, okay, the growth is positive. But if the sunlight is not easily available, or it's not, you don't get light, definitely there will be an obstacle in the growth of plant. So you can say that the plant growth is dependent on light. Okay, so light here stands for an independent variable, whereas the growth of a plant stands as a dependent variable. But at the same time, there are certain extraneous or controlled factors or variables which play an important role. So if you take an example of the light and plant growth, water, soil, temperature can work as what this controlled variables. Okay, where things you keep the same, do not change. Okay, this does not have an impact on any of them. So these things will be changed, so that's the reason they are called as controlled variables. So independent variable man are bound, makes manipulation possible. Again, there was a small question on this last year itself, okay, with respect to manipulation, whether it is independent variable or dependent variable. So yes, independent variables are those variables which influences dependent variable by manipulating and bringing the changes, by impact, having a cause and seeing the results, by influencing and seeing the effect. You have certain examples. See, like for example, stress leads to health deterioration. So stress is an independent variable, whereas deterioration of health is a dependent variable. It means that your health deteriorates with the amount of uh, stress level, high stress level or low stress level. Like for example, if your stress level is high and it keeps on at the same pace, it means there is impact on your health. But at the same time, if your stress level is normal, it is below the average, definitely your health will show good sign, the effect, the cause. Okay, openness, creativity. So openness increases creativity. So more openness, more creativity. But if the openness is reduced, it will definitely hamper the creativity. Again, dependent variable she sees the sees the effect. Okay, it sees the results. Extraversion increases social acceptance. Okay, parental intelligence leads to child intelligence. So the definitely the growth in parental intelligence leads to child intelligence. You need to obviously you need to get the research done, you need to prove it, but you need to identify which are the independent variables or which are the dependent variable, which can be manipulated, which are can be controlled, which can show you the result or the effect. Okay, then moving towards next is your hypothesis. Now, when we talk about hypothesis, we have already discussed what is hypothesis. Basically, hypothesis is nothing but but a tentative statement, definitely, which is which is given, and the I mean to say tentative statement based on which the assumptions are made, and those assumptions needs to be proved. Okay, we have done in the last lecture that these hypotheses should be simple, should be communicable, should be acceptable. Okay, you can tell them as the characteristics. It should be very clear, very specific. It should be able to predict outcome, or it should be able to generalize. So now we have already studied characteristics when we studied one of the topic of research method. So we have understood what is hypothesis, but let's understand the various types of hypothesis: simple, complex, empirical, null hypothesis, and alternative. Let's start with simple hypothesis. So definitely a simple hypothesis that where there exists a relationship between two variables, that is independent and dependent. Just now we saw them. Like for example, smoking leads to cancer. So smoking, that is your independent variable, leads to cancer, that is your dependent variable. So cancer is, is the effect, okay, is seen because of, the amount of increase in smoking habits. So the higher ratio of unemployment, the next example, the higher ratio of unemployment leads to crime. So the ratio of unemployment and the crimes, they have the relationship. So it's very simple. You have a proper definite, you have a proper independent variable, a proper dependent variable. You need to understand, study, analyze the relationship, and prove your hypothesis. Okay. Then next one we have as a complex hypothesis. Yes, the complex hypothesis is the one which examines the relationship between both, again, independent and dependent variable. But here there is a difference, that these variables can be more than two. Like for example, let us take an example of, so smoking leads to cancer, but at the same time it can increase your, or it can, that is because of tension, or it can increase your stress level. It can increase your chest infections, maybe, irregularity with your eating habits. So there are many variables. So when we talk about complex hypothesis, it's like, complicated, where you need to take care of all these variables in order to prove them. When I'm talking about the higher ratio of unemployment, the poverty, illiteracy leads to crime. Okay, so this, there are a lot of, it's not only crime, but it is about poverty, it is about illiteracy. So there are a lot of things which become as what, the dependent, I mean to say, variables in this type. The dependent variable or the independent variable can be in more numbers, but which can complicate the research, and it can divert or it can distract the focus or attention of the researcher. So if you are really strong with your database, which will help you to prove this, otherwise it's better to go with your simple hypothesis at an initial level. Then, talking about empirical hypothesis. Now, when we talk about empirical hypothesis, it's also called as working hypothesis. So it is again nothing but it is, the word empirical. It's used as a working hypothesis that can be tested by observation as well as by experiments. Okay, so this data helps us to produce the experiment. It's produced by an experiment, or with the help of an observation. So empirical data is nothing but it is called as the empirical hypothesis. It's nothing but which is called as working hypothesis. Coming next to is null hypothesis, which is denoted by HO. Okay, hypothesis which shows that there is no significant difference between the specified population. Okay, or any observed difference due to sampling or experimental error. So it signifies there is no differences. The opposite to that is alternate hypothesis, which is denoted by H1 or HA, and it talks about, existence of differences. So in case if your null hypothesis is rejected, your alternate hypothesis will be accepted. But if your null hypothesis is accepted, your alternate hypothesis will be rejected. Now all this depends upon what, all this depends upon your research, proving your research contrary contract, I mean, so contrary, it's about the relationship between the variables, about a change or about no change. So basically it talks about, more of your hypothesis, more of your study, analysis based on your data. Then let's next go to sampling techniques. Now, when I'm talking about sampling, or I mean to say sampling techniques, so basically what is sampling? So sampling is, taking sample of some population for a study. That is it's about sampling. Okay, preparing the sampling design, deciding the sampling size, and then understanding the technique, probabilistic or non-probability. Okay, probability is, having the chances, non-probability is equivalent not having the chances. So there are bifurcation between probability and non-probability. Let's first have a look at probability. Okay, that is starting with a stratified or simple random sampling. With the help of diagram, it is very clear. When we talk about simple random, it's generally the random numbers. It's random, simple random. It's not complicated at all. Okay. When we talk about the next is your systematic sampling. Systematic sampling, it means with random selecting is done based on every individual to be a part of sample. Now, when we talk about individual to be a part of sample, it will be basically done according to the random starting point or a fixed periodic interval. So it will be done in a systematic way, in a very organized way. Then when we talk about stratified, so under stratified sampling, it is basically selecting from a smaller group of division of a larger population. So this is your larger population, out of which from a smaller group, it will be collecting the sample. Next is your cluster sampling. So cluster sampling it's about randomly selecting the participants from the selected or from the specified geographical located area. From there, you can select your samples. That is in the form of clusters. So it is called as what? Cluster sampling. Then talking about your non-probability, where it does not give all the individuals in the population equal chance of being selected. So like for example, when I talk about the first is, let's go with convenience sample. So when I'm talking about convenience, it is basically done in the form of what? Selecting the samples accessible to the researcher or in an easy way, convenient. See, it is depending upon the convenience of the researcher. So the way it is convenient for the researcher, based on that, the samples will be collected. Then let's go to judgmental. Judgmental, it's selecting with the belief that some subjects are more suitable as compared to other individuals for the purpose of research. So you're being judgmental over here. So based on that judgmental, you will go with your judgment and get the sampling done. Go Next is snowball sampling. So basically snowball sampling, it's about selecting a subject who is asked to identify another. It means it's like a network. It's basically a network. Okay, so snowball sampling is also called as a network sampling. And last, that is quota sample. So when we talk about quota sample, it's selecting the sample that ensures equal or a proportionate representation, okay, as per the subject. Like for example, here if you can see, a proper quota is given. Okay, based on that quota, the sample size is selected. So this diagrams will help you to understand, proper way. So like for example, quota sampling, it is like, the samples, the quota is given, so you have to select the sample from that particular data itself, maybe the its age group, which is annual income. So based as a base, you can take that and you can go ahead with your sampling techniques. Okay, coming next towards is your sorry, scales. Now, when I'm talking about various types of scales, okay, in order to nothing but categorize the variables, a scale is used for data collection, and it is often called as the research instrument. So this is basically, scales are nothing but they are called as what? They are called as research instruments. So when research instruments, so when I'm talking about this type of research instruments, okay, so we have four type of research instruments, that is nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Okay, so let's start with the nominal case scale first. So basically, if you can see, they are categorized, they're labeled, they are classified names or types or that cannot be quantified. Okay, that is, it's a counted data. You assign the numbers, I mean to say, system of naming or labeling events by assigning the number symbols to them. uh, Basically it's not associated with any order, or cannot give, let us an example, cannot measure the attitude and skills. Under the scale you can't do that. Okay, so chi-square test, if you decide, can be utilized with the help of nominal data. If this I'll be taking when I'll be taking the lecture on test, so that time we may repeat it once again. But right now you just have to remember that chi-square test can be utilized by the nominal scale. Okay, going ahead with the ordinal scale, which provides a rank order of subjects or individuals from first to last. So basically, it places the events or objects in an order. Okay, it rank them. Okay, uh, in the form of one extreme to another. At the same time, this particular type of scales ensure that they have absolute values and may state that the subject is greater than 1. Okay, or it is less than 1, or it is equal to, but to another. But stating how much greater or less is not possible. So under this can be a drawback. So the appropriate measure of central tendency in the form of mode and median is taken under ordinal scale. Okay, coming to interval scales, that is includes ranks, ordering, and additional characteristics, okay, between the numbers. So when you talk about interval scale, so it is basically it's attributed sorry, having an attribute to 0, okay, but not an absolute 0. So equality of interval in this type of scale is feasible. So like for example, this type of scales are used for t test and f test. Coming to ratio scales, so ratio scales does not have any absolute zero value or 0 point, okay, which permits forming ratio statement. So it helps in the kind of comparison. So if you want to do with a comparison, you can go with ratio scale. Okay, if you want to go with t test, f test, you can go with interval scale. If you want to go for chi-square, you can go for nominal. If you want to go with central tendency of mode and median, you can go with interval. So this type of questions can be expected from this particular topic. So as we have decided that we'll be doing this few important topics, that is coming with sources, coming with variables, coming with sampling, and coming with scales. So basically here, except one or two topics, we have a majority completed. Now we'll be focusing on risk theories, I mean to say article writing. We'll be focusing on research ethics, and we will be focusing on certain references with reference to research. So very soon, I meant to say, will be very close to